everyone. Welcome to our April 17th budget work session. Glad you are all here. Two quick things. We are looking at a date for the future teachers scholarship. So we are looking at a couple dates in early May. We'll follow up with another possibility. And also, I've talked to a couple folks that I'm finishing up the graduations. I have most of your sheets, but just need to get a couple back. So we'll do that. I have everybody's sheets just about. So appreciate that, and we're looking forward to a very important meeting today. Ms. Bowie, would you please call the roll?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Pete Wildeboer.
Present.
Melissa Mason.
Here.
Josie Barnhart.
Here.
Pat Bradford.
I am here.
Stephanie Craybill.
Here.
Hugh McManus.
Here.
And Stephanie Walker.
Here.
Again, thank you for being here this morning. I would entertain now a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
First and second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes 7-0. At this point, we've asked Ms. Walker to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Walker.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All righty. Well, hope everyone's doing well this morning, and I do want to welcome senior staff and everyone else that is here today. So, welcome. At this time, we will continue on with our 2024-25 budget resolution draft. Ms. Sutton.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to go over today any changes that we're aware of, whether it be updates from the state or from the county or updates within our group related to the budget. So these would just be changes. We've already gone through positions and non-salary line items, and these would be just adjustments since the last budget work session. So you do have as a handout, and it was the same document was uploaded for the work session today, just a draft budget resolution based on the current budget plan, and this is still just a draft for us to talk through. The first page covers expenditures, and it is by purpose function and also by funding source. And none of the information on this first page has changed. However, there is a caveat there, sorry. We did have some federal revenue increases, and I have made some adjustments on that first page, but we'll talk about that as we go through the revenue changes. So if you go to the second page, you can see the revenue sources and then the amount for each fund. So we'll start with our state revenue. That's our state public school fund, and it's the first column on that second page of that document under the revenue section. There isn't a change to that dollar amount. We're using the same revenue projection that we had talked about in our previous meetings, but I did want to give an update. I was in a meeting yesterday with DPI, and they did provide information as far as they're anticipating having their planning revenue numbers to us by May 3rd. So we still have a couple more weeks before we have their planning numbers. But based on the information I was hearing, I still feel like our projections are good. But certainly once I have those planning numbers from the state, we'll shore up that revenue.
Mr. Wilbert, do you have questions to you?
Ms. Sutton, would you rather hold questions or ask them as they come up?
It might be better because I'm just going to go over briefly the changes. So it might be better to hold and just have a big discussion at the end on any additional questions that might come up.
So, members, if you would just write down your questions and keep them. If you're like me, you might forget them.
And then the next column you see on that second page is local current expense, and we refer to this often as our local fund or our general fund. We refer to it that way sometimes. In that category is where we have our county appropriation revenue. And as you remember, in our last budget board work session, we had a projected revenue of $4.5 million, and we have adjusted that number based on the last county budget work session. We've adjusted that number to $5.5 million. And so with that increase, the county funding will increase from a little over $94 million to $101.5 million. And that includes the general appropriation, but it also includes the grant funding for the pre-K classrooms. So that was the same funding level as we had received in the past.
Ashley, where are you on this chart?
On the second page, middle of the page starts revenue sources, and we were just talking about the local current expense column.
Oh, that one, okay. Thank you.
And in that column, there are some other revenues other than the revenue received by the county. As you can see there, that's fines and forfeitures that we're estimating based on historical revenue, but not a change to that number. That number is the same as we had discussed before. The next column is our federal grant fund. We do have an increase in this area per the conversation with DPI yesterday. Once again, planning allotments, they're not anticipating releasing those until actually the first week of June. But they did provide a little more information and said that they're no longer anticipating us needing to budget for a reduction to 10 to 15%. And so some of our federal programs, we did that reduction, and some we didn't. But the reduction, when we took that out, it amounted to almost $1 million. A majority of that is related to Title I funding. And so we've put that back into the budget. So you'll see a little difference there. Then the next column is our other restricted revenue fund, and this is where we account for our grants that do not flow through DPI and other donations and community use revenue that we receive. And then you have a total there for your operating budget, and then you have a column for capital outlay. Now you will notice a difference here. Based on the county budget work session, we're not anticipating receiving any capital funds from the county for next year. And so we've taken that revenue out, and we've only included in this draft document that $2 million that's coming from the state through lottery funding. The enterprise fund, which is our food service or our child nutrition fund, which is the last fund you see here, there's no change to that. That's the same information that we've shared previously, and that is based on the revenue they're projecting, based on the prices they're charging and historical data for being able to collect, get reimbursements from the feds and our student population enrollment. So no changes there compared to what we've talked about previously. And then the last column you'll see there is our total budget. I did want to give a little more information related to positions, to give you an update on where we are with positions, with vacancies, and our turnover rate at this point. So as we have talked about before, and I am rounding up here a little bit, so forgive me for that, but the total positions that we had identified through this budget plan for reduction was 280, and so we've said that number a lot. The extra county funding will help us reduce that amount by 76 positions, which would give us a remaining total of 204. And then we're running reports every week looking at our current vacancies or frozen positions to see how far along we are with our plan. We currently have 80 vacant or frozen positions. that are included in our reduction plan. Now, we may have other positions that are vacant, but if they weren't included in this plan, I didn't count them in that number. We have 57 positions that they're not vacant yet, but they're pending separation. So those individuals are retiring, or we already have been notified that they're resigning. So that brings our pending attrition number that we're working towards to 67. And based on the turnover rates that I've been working actually with HRs to get those rates by position to do this analysis, but we're anticipating another 33 positions will come vacant between now and June 30th. And so that would bring our total vacant/frozen positions to 170 by June 30th. And that's on track with our original plan. Now, some vacant positions that are not in the plan may not be filled if we need to use those positions for attrition. So I just wanted to make sure that I say that. In addition, we're also working on the endowment application. Oh, okay. And so that is still in a draft format. It has not been finalized, but we're working on that application for literacy coaches. And in this application is 26 literacy coaches positions that would be for pre-K elementary. And so if we are awarded that grant, then that would bring our positions that we're still pending attrition to 8. So we feel like with the revenue projections we have and our plan for attrition and where we are now with our frozen positions or vacant positions, that we're on track to be where we need to be. And so assuming that we're able to do that and everything's going to work as we projected, we do have a budget plan based on the information that I just shared, and at this point it is balanced with those assumptions in mind. And so now I just open it up to the board for discussion or questions for the team.
Ms. Barnhart.
Thank you, Ms. Sutton, for that presentation. So, am I understanding correctly? Initially, when the budget was brought for us, the balance of getting the 280 positions was an increase of $4.5 million. What you're saying is now the budget, and rather than an increase of $4.5 million, it's an increase of $5.5 million. However, the bulk is no longer in capital that we're requesting. The bulk is in the position side of things.
That's right.
So that I'm correct in that understanding.
That's correct.
Okay, and then from the 76 positions that you spoke of, which ones of those are we targeting coming back? Because I know that we were talking about board priorities, so I'd just like to hear about that.
Yeah, so the positions that we're targeting to come back are the 6 AIG teachers.
Okay.
8 enhancement teachers, 15 classroom teachers, and 47 teacher assistants.
So what does that mean we're expecting to come back? Like, if
So we are still working towards that attrition number, and so we may not have vacancies in all the right places, and so that's why I had mentioned before that some positions that may become vacant, even though they may not be in this plan for reduction, they might stay vacant until we know that we're going to be able to fund the positions that are currently filled. But example, and this isn't a good example, I'll just say this, because I don't think we have any AIG vacancies now, but if we had an AIG vacancy, then we may have to hold that vacancy until we know that we had the funding to pay for it. But we would bring those positions back once we had the available funding.
Okay, so my follow-up question to that is, when do we expect to know if we have those funds? Like, are we just like sitting on pins and needles and until the first day of school, or till September, or?
So we have the plan that I've laid out. If everything comes together as we have planned, we would only have 8 positions as of July 1 that we would be waiting for attrition. The student-facing positions wouldn't actually come back till August, so we got another month there if we needed it for attrition. But I think what we would have to do is bring back to you, if we felt like we were going to have to keep some of these positions as vacant for a little while, we would have to bring that back to the board, because at this point, I don't know if the turnover is all going to happen as we have planned. We feel like it's a good projection, a good estimate, but until we're a little bit closer to June, I won't know that for sure.
You
And-
got list?
Yeah.
More time, please. The 8 positions.
Oh.
Bring it back. I started
Yes.
trying to write it down, but you were.
Yeah, no problem. It's 6 AIG teachers, 8 enhancement teachers, so that would be art, music, PE, 15 classroom teachers, and 47 teacher assistants. And I think Chris had something he wanted to add.
And before he says that, when she's talking about the AIG teachers, she's talking about above the 19 that the state actually gives us.
Right.
So all of these numbers are above what the state gives, so it's not a reduction, so when the money that you're talking about now is literally local funds. And so it's above and beyond what the state gives. So that list that she's saying she's buying back are those positions that are above what the state offers. So the state gives you 19, and it was 8 that we're
Right.
buying back. So 19 plus 8.
Yes.
Of those, I know a very big concern for several of us is EC. Of those listed, how many of those positions are EC positions?
So the state allocates an allotment for regular teacher assistants, K1, 2, and 3, in a kind of a sliding scale. This year, we allocated all of our third grade allotment that would normally go to regular TAs, we furnished over to EC to try to help build those numbers up. Right now, principals are looking at attritioning their regular TAs just naturally to the number that we've given them. So my understanding would be most of these 47 would be able to be pushed back towards special ed.
And is that the classroom teachers as well? Because I know that there were some of those on the,
So, and that's actually what I was going to say earlier. There's a little bit of complexity in the teacher side of things because a lot of these are licensure specific. So what's going to happen is I will run out of available math teachers prior to me running out of maybe K-5. So some of what Ashley is talking about is that sort of reverb to make sure that we have everybody in a highly qualified spot as well. So will some of those 15 go back to EC? It's going to depend on the load, the timing, and all those situations. Some of these 15 are also for when you get to August and a school goes over their class cap for a specific grade level. So some of those things are factors you have to look at. It's not, even in elementary, it's not simple because you could be specialized in early literacy versus 5th grade, but then definitely when you get into middle and high school, it's subject specific for licensure.
Yeah, I have several. Let's just start with my first one. If we're going to 0 for capital, how is the county going to provide anything for capital? I mean, how are we? Where does that leave our capital budget? I know we have some carryover from years past that hasn't yet been spent, but where does that leave us?
Well, we do have carryover. Those funds are committed, even if they're encumbered. They may not have been spent at this time. The bulk of our work will take place during the summer. But we do have $2 million projected in state lottery funds, and we are looking at our capital list, and we will provide, we'll recommend those funds go to continuation of projects that are already underway or anything that we feel could be an emergency or an interruption in services of next year. So those are the priorities that we're focused on, and we're reevaluating the capital list.
And so just to add to that, the county usually allots us, before last year, it was what, about 5 million?
Correct.
Last year, we got 13,
Yeah.
so roughly about, was it 13? What was last year?
With our lottery, that's correct.
So it's 13, so we were given 13 last year. Typically, we get 5, so they almost tripled what they gave us. So we're still working through those dollars. And in the event that there is an emergency, we always, as you know, we come to the board and then we go to the county and ask for money to be moved, that we need to spend it on something else. So there's still funding that's out there. It's just this year, the 13 that was given last year is carrying over to this year.
I just want to follow up on that. You said in an emergency, I think the news was saying in the last couple of days, we're having an enormous amount of hurricanes. And so that's a different pot of money, and that's a different emergency you're talking about. Because that's still, we need to talk about that. If we've got 1 point something left in the fund balance, how are we going to deal with an emergency?
So I'll be honest with you, since I've been here, the county has always said in the event that there is an emergency to come to them. And I just believe that they wouldn't go back on their word not to. And that's typically what your county is for, because we don't have a savings account. Our money, even though if you have that, it's still, that's part of what our county is able to do. If you actually look down at columns 2 and 3, the state gives us 193 million. Our county gives us 101 million. So they're not, I mean, that's a lot of money from different for our county. So I would also just assume if there is a catastrophe that we definitely go. I mean, they know those types of things, the relationships that we have with them. I just don't believe that they would say, oh, the building has fallen in, it's on you.
Mr. McManus?
Well, a couple of questions. Back to what Dr. Faust just said. When we first were told to reduce our fund balance by the county commissioners, this discussion came up, if I remember correctly, about storms, roofs leaking, major HVAC, et cetera. So what I'm hearing is that's not something for us to be concerned about. And Pat is correct, Dave's headline said the worst prediction for hurricanes ever. So I just want to make sure, so you're comfortable that that's not an issue with the fund balance?
I am comfortable because even if that were to happen, there's insurance things that has to take place in it.
But we're not worried about it.
I'm not, no,
My
that's
question,
not a worry.
Ashley, if I may, excuse me, Ms. Sutton, based upon everything you said, where are we, what's the closest number from the original 280 that we really need to worry about at this moment? As you went through about reassigned, pending resignations, probable additional that will probably leave, can you give me, not holding you to it, but excuse me, I should have said Dr. Walker.
Chris doesn't want to answer that
Pass out real quickly.
These numbers that you have here are safe numbers, so you can assume that they will not necessarily land as low as this. I think, then Dr. Faust, I think, can say it as well, but we now feel like we're going to have enough holes for all of our marbles to go into. Now, it may mean that someone's going to have to do a job maybe a little bit different or in a different location than they're doing now, but with the work we've done to freeze, with the work we're doing with what's going to be coming, we feel like everybody who is intending to want to stay here and is in good standing will have the opportunity. But they may just be doing it in a job slightly different or in a different location.
But okay, so what I'm hearing, I want to make sure I understand this, because this is public for the board. You're saying zero.
Well,
Basically, anyone who wants to stay here, although they may have to change positions, assignments, et cetera, we're looking at a zero loss based upon everything I just heard.
We have 8 on this form because we want to make sure we're being careful. But
Central office will lose positions. This is only student facing.
right, yeah, the ones that were slated in the original plan for a central office are still going to be eliminated by June 30. These are school-based positions that we're talking about.
Ms. Walker.
I have so many, but we've been jumping categories, so I wish we would have kept the AIG conversation together and the EC teacher. Anyway, so I know I was at the county budget meeting, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't feel like I understood everything that was being told because I don't know I was privy to all those conversations, but I do have it in front of me. This is their printout. And there was a question specifically asked about, from this list of positions, about EC teachers. And I don't know that we've been absolutely clear about that in our discussion. I see 47 teacher assistants, but I know a question was asked at the meeting specifically about EC, and I don't think there was an answer given. So I would like to know, because, you know, I got to attend, or I got to hear from an EC teacher that is concerned about even the loss of one teacher at her school, what that will do to the student population there. And so that is what is top of mind, I think, for this community, is what is going on with that. And so I would like, at this meeting, to get a concrete answer about how many EC teachers we're going to be losing. And I've always said, I don't think our high-need schools need to lose positions. And so we had a discussion about prioritization. I know the board did, and Ms. Barnhart brought up the fact that we should be at least part of the conversation on prioritizing these positions. But if they just say classroom teachers, 47 teacher assistants, it's not specific enough. So can we have some more answers to that? I just hope we have that today. I don't know if I'll look at you, Dr. Barnes. You don't have to, if it's someone else's question.
And Julie, jump in if I say this incorrectly, but in the budget that we built, there was a reduction of 16 teachers, EC teachers specifically, out of the total number. Now, when we looked at, and then Julie, of course, and her folks looked at caseloads, class sizes, IEP restrictions, state restrictions, so 16 EC teachers out of the total that we had was the number that we're still working. The teacher assistant number, like we said, if we're looking at people shifting and moving, I don't know right now how many next year of those 47 will be able to be EC versus it's going to take, attrition's going to have to be a part of that conversation.
Well, I was reminded that I know we're looking at attrition as part of the calculation of staff reduction, but a loss is a loss. And people feel that, and like you had alluded to, we're talking about people. So I just think there is a great concern about, especially specifically EC, and I know you're saying it's hard to answer at this moment, but I guess when I was taking notes at the county meeting, I said 47 teacher assistants, but I'm curious, is it because teacher assistants maybe don't take as much away as far as the whole package of like salary and all the things that go with a full-time position? Does that make sense? I know my brain's not good.
And any one of you can jump in if you want, but when we looked at what the state allotments are for positions, when you look at those teacher assistants, we were further over in that category than other places. In other words, they could have, you know, the state budget and the federal budget could afford 150 EC teacher assistants. The requirement would be about 150, but we had 215. So I think that's why that number seemed larger, was because it took further to get back to a balance with that group.
Right. So the state in the special education class size requirements and caseload requirements requires far less teacher assistants than we know are needed in our classrooms. So we have continually provided and funded more in order to be able to accomplish the goals in the classrooms and to make the progress with students that we've made. So that's exactly right. We had to make a significant reduction because we didn't have a specific line item that was committed to those teacher assistants, because our state money comes in and we know we have to have a certain level of teachers. They're required for every special education classroom. So we had to drop down. I had to drop down by 68. But so that's why we're really looking at that being the amount that we push back up.
So just to follow, because there's nuance to this discussion, because I know we got sent something on Friday about the state allotment, but it did stay at the top. It says it depends on the population and severity. Was that the wording?
Yes.
So doesn't it depend on per site?
It does. So we have to look at those class by class.
Right.
And across 45 schools, that's a really interesting task. But my background is special education. That's my teaching licensure. So I've been in the classroom in that and understand how to schedule and allocate for that. If you'll recall, in our last budget work session, I gave you a document, a two-sided printout of special education class size and caseload. And I can certainly provide that again, but that's from the policy manual, the DPI State Board Policy Manual, and it is in alignment, that's it, in alignment with federal regulations. And the bottom of that page clarifies, well, it sort of clarifies the severity of student need, and that's how you will determine those class sizes and caseloads. We're very conservative in how we approach that to ensure that students get the services they need and teachers have enough hands in the classroom.
So really, okay, teacher assistants are important, but I guess the concern is the actual EC teacher loss. That's probably going to be our biggest worry.
Which is why, so my overall reduction was 20. I had to balance that with loss at the district level. Now, those aren't true central office positions while they sit on central office payroll. Those folks are out in the classrooms and out in the schools every day. But I did reduce the district level support staff. Those are support staff to teachers. I had to reduce those in order not to reduce teachers by more than 16.
We'll go around again. Mr. Crable, do you have a question?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. One, well, let me start with this one. When you were talking about the endowment application is in for literacy, are there any other areas that we can submit to the endowment, such as our mental health workers that we're going to lose a bunch of people on, or any other programmatic things that
So what we are looking at right now, so literacy is in our strategic plan.
Right.
And so the goal to get there at 90% on grade level
No,
by
I'm on
third
board with
grade.
that.
And so that is what we are looking at. And so we've made so much progress from 21 till now. And so in an effort to do that, we thought if we write a grant, we would be able to keep the momentum going with those positions. As you know, we got the was it the promise? We're in another article. I forget what the article is. It's on it's in my email. It's something of promise.
Yeah.
And so the state has recognized us, which was just, I think, 3 weeks ago. And then, of course, we got the Champions of Change. And so districts around the state are looking, honestly, which is a good thing, they're looking at us and saying, hey, what did you do to do this? And so we were fortunate enough to be able to provide solid literacy instruction and have those implemented in the classrooms, and we started with our pre-K. So we're really and truly starting or asking for support with our literacy program, because we know, and I'll tell you this honestly, if kids can read on grade, it changes the trajectory of their outcomes. And so, of course, you know, I mean, I'm speaking to the choir at this point. It helps with the economic base when kids can read on grade level. And so that's why we went for that one being our priority, because we did look at what was the board, and that's a strategic goal. Other things, I know that the endowment does have, and I forget what they call those types of grants where you can provide responses.
Response ones, right.
Yes, so those will come along, yes. Those are things that we will be looking at. But we're also working with CSI, I think CSI.
CSI investigators.
Yes. Thank you. And there was a grant that, what was the grant that was, I'm getting all these
The one
things.
that's already funded?
Yes, the one that's funded.
So we partnered with Communities in Schools to provide a local full-service community schools project for Freeman Elementary. And that was the same project we talked about several months ago, being interested in having those in our schools. So Freeman being the priority, and that was already funded, and so that project planning is underway to begin in the new school year. And that was endowment funded. Okay, so I'm on board with all of that, and I understand all that, and I'm glad that we're doing all that. My question was really more directed is, we applied for several others before.
Yes.
And we were told, not no, but not now, try later, which was the standard answer. So my question is, looking at our strategic plan, mental school safety is one of our pillars, and is our tied with academics.
Yes.
And so my question there was, are we interested, or are we going to apply for endowment grants for those other areas, and maybe even reapply, especially for the students that are in the teachers and staff that are in the low-performing schools where we wanted to do more, incentive pay, for them. Is that off the table? Can we not apply for more than one at the same time?
So still
and still keep some of these people?
Yes, so still on the table. And just to go back to this safety and security, so you'll know that in this year's budget, at the General Assembly, we were awarded $3.2 million for school safety. And I'll say thank you to Senator Lee for having us pilot this. That's going through right now.
That's the AI.
That's the
Right.
AI, but it just takes so long. Hopefully the kids won't be gone before we get in the works. So safety, yes, but what we're also looking at is what works. So we're having to examine everything that works. So we get this in place. We want to see, does that actually provide the safety that we need, or do we need more? So technically, we are evaluating everything. Ashley and I were having a conversation on yesterday about having, honestly, a list and putting data in that list of everything that we're offering, our district is offering, and seeing what those data points are getting versus applying and getting, and we don't know which is working, so we're wanting to now couple it. So we are, and yes, we can reapply for all, and we do plan to reapply for everything that we did not, because we want to have more conversations on those.
Because we
with
weren't
the
frivolous
community.
in those applications.
Right, no, and those were well-written. It told our story, and we do want to go back and sit at the table and explain to them about why with it. So yes, we are going to be reapplying for everything, but right now the priority is for our literacy, because we know that is, I'll be honest with you, that's a gatekeeper. And I think if kids that are, and I'd pull the research, but there's research, kids who read on grade level are less likely to have issues in school that are violent and getting in trouble. So those are things, if I can get the kids to read on grade level, then research says that it will reduce the issues. And I know there's some mental health, and I'm not negating mental health. I know that's a whole different, but we want to look at the things that we can fix. And then of course, yes, they are mental health, and we talked with them at the last week about some things with mental health, but we won't go into all of those, but yes, we are looking at.
Mr. Chair, can I just follow up with Ms. Craybill? Because I would like to know what we had discussions for on the endowment. Was that your question too?
Yeah, no, but I agree.
I would like for everyone to hear what we have been talking about, because people have asked us the same question. We did the first cycle and we didn't get what we asked for. I want to know what the discussion was this time. Because I've been told they're not open for business, they're looking for a CEO. I just would like to know what we as a district did.
It seems like we applied for an endowment, and I think the board should know what we applied for and what
We applied for like 4.
Well, we did. We let the board, all of those were sent to the board. Those that we didn't get. I can pull those back they're in your memo.
But you're asking, what are we planning now?
Right now. Well, we hadn't applied for anything. We are having a conversation, so we're writing a grant
For literacy. and
for
that's
literacy.
the only one.
Can we have the specifics? I just want specifics, that's all.
Well, I was just going to clarify on the mental health piece. Prior to the county funding their staff to support mental health needs, we had community partnerships where there was a no cost to parents and no cost to the students. I mean, no cost to parents, no cost to the district. And those partnerships are still able to be retapped. So we are already in dialogue with our community partners that we're able to provide those in-school services under an MOU. And we had and those MOUs were board approved in the past prior to the partnership with the county. So those are things that we're already working on that won't actually cost the district dollars.
I want to follow up on Ms. Cradle's question because I don't think we've heard the answer. And going back, I listened to the budget meeting and I've been talking to principals, as you know, and what I'm hearing is when the child shows up for school on that first day, they're coming with issues that are causing teachers to be hit, bitten, chairs thrown, and so on. So if when the child shows up at school, there's an issue before they get to us, before we start dealing with them reading. That was the number one answer I got from everybody I asked. And so that's a mental health issue. So there's got to be, when I watched the budget meeting, there was this very long presentation from Trillium. And I don't know if they have anything, but they've just literally doubled what they do in the last 90 days. But is there a community partner that we can get to come along? And it's probably more of a county problem than ours, because when they show up, they're ours, and before they show up, they belong to the county. But can we deal with that before they get to pre-K, mental health issue? Because that's what I'm hearing. These kids were locked away. They didn't see anybody for a year. They don't know how to associate with other kids. They come angry, and it's really disruptive in our pre-K classes, and maybe they can't read because they're busy being disrupted. So can we get a mental health look, an endowment grant or partners or something that takes that part off our plate? I think it'll be a lot better in the schools.
So I think that's an amazing pitch for universal preschool that would also have the mental health supports attached to that and referral based. The difficult position that schools are in, this is why we try to do kindergarten registration as early as possible, so we know who's coming to us, and get the kindergarten assessments in time that ask a lot of the questions about any kind of skill deficits that interfere with academic readiness. I'll put it that way. But often we find that we bring in kindergartners, and sometimes kids who are first grade age, and they come in and they have many, many risk factors. And we weren't aware these children, but of course, they are going to be enrolled on day one and be served on day one. So very often at the beginning of the school year, we're behind on really trying to address the risk factors. So I think it's really about having community partnership in preschool services where students can be in a structured setting, where there are reinforcers for positive behaviors and developmentally appropriate consequences for negative behaviors, and then referrals for mental health services.
Well, can we dial back to 25? Because that's what Ms. Cradle's asking about. What are we going to do about the mental health of these kids because we're cutting for 25? What are we going to do?
So the kids that we know about and that we can know about. We're trying to know about our incoming kindergartners all the time. And our preschool program, look at my partner here, our preschool program that's under Dr. Faison, the gen ed part of that, does a lot of that work and seeking to get referrals for our Head Start or NC Pre-K, our local programs, to bring in students that have the risk factors so we can support them in academic readiness. But because we don't, and we also have we continually communicate within our community to physicians, Smart Start, private preschools, public preschools, everything on any child that may have a disability, because we start evaluating little ones with disabilities by 2 years, 6 months, so that we can start providing them services by the time they turn 3. So our preschool program for children with disabilities, we've already increased our caseload and our evaluations and eligibilities. Crazy. We've got 61 new preschool students with disabilities since December. And those are just the ones that get referred to us that we can evaluate and identify. So it's about we're serving those. We just need to know about students that might have a disability, might have mental health concerns, so that we can do that intake and screening. And universal preschool would do it. If every child was in preschool, that would do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a long list of questions, but I'm going to keep it to like the 1-2 top priority. I have talked about maintaining and sustaining our budget. And so the issue when we kept using fund balance, we knew we couldn't keep this up. And so here's one of my concerns is we have a lot of capital improvement needs, and I understand right now we're focused on operating, but we can't just pretend that those don't exist. And I understand we missed the ball to be able to put it on a ballot for 2024. So the next time we can have a bond is 2026. So I feel like this board needs to have priority and tell the county in 25, this is our bond gonna ask in 26 so that we're ready. So I'm gonna say that right now because, yeah. And the second thing is this budget operating side sustainable? Are we gonna continue to ask for this year after year or more? And I don't know if that's the conversation that's been asked, but I don't want next year to be told you're going to get 5 million less and we're in the same boat. Does that make sense?
Right, so based on the county budget work session, the 5.5 million is reoccurring. Now,
Okay.
please keep in mind, it is still an estimate because the commissioners have not voted on that, but it was presented as reoccurring funding.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the EC department, but the other group that I think we really need to focus on is the AIG group. It is a small group. It is a small set of staff, and when you reduce it by any, it's really very dramatic. My question is, who made those calls on what number of AIG staff to be reduced? Because that seems to be something that people are not aware of. We know that Ms. Barnum does a lot with the EC department. Who does the AIG?
Most of the normal school allotments come through the allotment formula, which is a rubric we use to assign staff to schools. When we gave out allotments to principals in the worst-case scenario several months ago, we reverted most of our opportunities down to what the state would allow until we could balance ourselves and then decide where to revert back, if that makes sense. So when you look at the state allocation for AIG teachers, it came down to 2019, actually, state-funded AIG teachers. We then went with our principals and asked them, what's your order of operations, right? What are the things you think are most critical? What are the things you could absorb within your department? Took their feedback as well, and then built a allotment formula for AIG under the worst-case scenario of having 19. If we revert back to these additional ones, then we will push those back out in a formula as well, so it's fair. Most of the formula was built, the formula was built on, I took the number of AIG students in the fall, the number in the spring, calculated it twice, and then arranged them by number of AIG students. Because we have some schools with as little as 9 and some schools as high as 99. And in our old formula, everyone got the exact same amount, regardless of how many AIG students they had.
So just to clarify, this was not like a central office type thing? This was a school-by-school based decision?
It was not a school-by-school.
Based on the principals? Or?
I asked the principals their opinion and feedback,
Right.
but when I built the allotment formula, I built it by the number of AIG students.
And then my last one, sorry, I never do this, so y'all can be patient with me. I know that there is an individual who is responsible, who is the supervisor of the AIG. Was that person asked their thoughts?
I can answer. If I may. I've received several texts and emails about this very question about AIG, well, at every level, so there's no one that's getting more attention. A letter was sent out to Maureen Meehan that her position would be done away with. And that's not the only letter that's gone out. I have a copy of it here.
She sent it to us.
Is that correct? Yeah. And so my question is, and I'm not trying to create a problem, but I know it does. First with the county commissioners against us or us against them, we all have to, the closer we work together, the more we benefit students. And maybe this will improve for us in the long run. But why in the world, I've said it before and will say it again, I like to be repetitive. Why we can't get the endowment with support from the county commissioners to get us through this year for the best interest of our community and our schools, and then the matriculation again, you can start playing with that, and in a year, it will take care of itself. And that way, we've just not all of a sudden imploded. To listen to us talk, we all have our pet, which is good, you should. EC and AIG are the extremes. Both of those are vitally important. But for letters to go out when this board has not determined any specificity to what we're going to cut throws us under the bus. And I get these emails and texts that say, I can't believe you agreed to, I said, we haven't discussed that yet. And we've met how many times? And I like that we're all sharing what's important. But at some point, we've got to come down to a fact. And the emotion, the support in this school system, we are destroying it. We are creating an atmosphere, and why we just can't get the endowment to make the difference for the rest of this year, and then we can deal with it. I just don't understand. You know how important education. We have a great school system. We just talk about the negative stuff and makes people think that we've got a lot of problems. But we don't. But we have problems, and we need to make sure we address those. But we got a $1 zillion endowment that can help us for a year. People are moving here because of the school system. I mean, a one-year shot is not worth for this whole community.
It's my turn.
A follow-up.
I mean, it's my turn. I've been waiting. So, and I'm sorry, that wasn't addressed to you, but I've written them down so I don't forget them. You know, it's very hard to remember when you're waiting 5 minutes. So I would still like to circle back because I wrote down when, as she was giving her, just talk about pre-K, the endowment application for our pre-K. So that's a follow-up. I know when I was at the county meeting, they talked about funding, maintaining funding, but that means loss of 2 classrooms. And does that mean we have made an application to the endowment to cover those or not? I just want an answer because I don't think we got one. And I know there have been discussions, I've been told. So I would like to clarify that, if that's okay first. Anyone?
The only endowment application that we're currently working on is the literacy. So as of right now, we have not started an application for preschool classrooms or any of the other items that may have been discussed in previous meetings. But you're correct that the funding that we received is not going towards the 2 classrooms that we talked about reducing in pre-K. When we met with the endowment last week, and those that were in that meeting, help me if I say this incorrectly, but I believe they're not opening up to review applications till January, is what I'm recalling. So we're working on applications, but we wouldn't be able to submit until they open up.
So thank you. So it's not part of this budget discussion, the endowment at all. That's what I've been told. I was at the county meetings. They're not, I heard they said they were open for business, but I've been told they are not. They're in search of a CEO. And then further than that, I've been told that they're going to be looking for an education person. So you're talking about 6 months or more. So that does mean that we will be losing at least 2 pre-K classrooms, correct? And we do not have a current, so I hear the word literacy too. So was there a literacy plan? I just need to know this because, I mean, people are asking me questions and I don't know the answers to them, and I would like to be able to answer. If we as a school district, whoever is doing it, is putting a plan in for literacy, can we know what that means? Because like I said, I wrote down pre-K with that, and it obviously is not the same thing. So can we get some answers, please?
The application that we're drafting that hasn't been finalized has those 20, I had mentioned earlier, has the 26 literacy coach positions in that application, and that's the only thing currently in that application. And it would, the request would be for a 3-year grant, so we would have those 26 positions for 3 years. As far as a plan, I'm going to have to let instruction talk a little more about the curriculum, or I think it's just continuing what we're already doing with those positions, but I don't know enough about the instruction side.
Are you asking exactly what we're doing with
I mean, I'm hearing their discussions. I'm hearing all these things. I'm writing them down. Literacy plan. That's what I think I heard.
So you're asking exactly what the coaches will be doing?
I would like to know what was asked, what the plan is.
So for literacy
Sure, whatever it is you guys presented.
No, literacy, we hadn't presented anything. So
Okay.
Let me help you
It's good to know.
understand.
Thank you.
We are
Yeah.
writing a grant
Thank
for
you.
literacy facilitators because of the strong success that we've had with literacy. What we were told when we were literally looking at the endowment will not supplant. I think those are the words that we use. They do not supplant. So they will not go and say, oh, I'm trying to think of something that would be considered supplanting. I need Ashley or from federal. What would
I guess
supplant?
maybe an example would be if we already had those 26 literacy coaches in the classroom right now, and we just decided, let's do an endowment request to fund those 26 and use the money that we're currently using for the 26 for something else. That would be an example of supplanting. But since we don't have those positions currently, these are new positions, so you wouldn't have that concern.
I wanted to follow up to the two follow-ups. One with, and I don't know if Kevin, I don't know your last name, I'm sorry, I can't remember, but from the county. As part of their budget presentation, they talked about community building, and they had, and of course, they haven't voted on their budget either, I was just listening, $750,000 into pre-K expansion. So I didn't know if that meant that we could tap into that for our 2 classes that we were going to have to eliminate, or was that more pre-K expansion for private pre-Ks and other, getting more towards universal pre-K? So but that's $750,000. If the county commissioners approved it, then could we not, and it was earmarked for us, can we not use that for the 2 classes? I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, Eric.
Well, I didn't know, that's why I didn't want to invite.
Thank you,
if that-
Eric.
We'd love to hear from you, Eric.
Eric Cradle with the county. That 750 looks like a typographical error. It should be 975. Each set of 6 classes is 975,000.
Okay.
There was a baseline 6 classes for 975, and we did the expansion. It was for 975 for an additional 6 classes. And we're proposing carrying that same level of funding going forward. So there would be ideally 12, but I hear what you're saying, there would be 10 classes at the current level, funding level.
So we as a county, or we as a district are making that choice to take away 2 classes.
So the county's only providing enough funding for us to have 10 classes.
Yes, not for the classroom.
So we don't have, so even though the funding is staying the same as it is this year, it's not enough money to pay for anticipated raises and benefits that go along with that.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Appreciate that. And so the other follow-up question was to what Mr. McManus was leading to. Help me understand to make sure that I'm clear on what we are supposed to be doing as a board. Is we have given you direction, we think, to reduce some of central office staff. And so we're reducing some of central office staff, putting some of them back into the classrooms, or reassigning them to something else. But it's not really, is it really, or is it not really our job to say, we want you to save this position, but not that position? Because if we were talking about that kind of stuff, then we would be talking about, hey, we don't want to lose the family life people either. So I just want us to be clear on what kind of direction that we are supposed to be providing here. I mean, are we getting down in the weeds and saying, Dr. Faust, Dr. Barnes, we want you to get rid of those positions, or we want you to reassign those positions? And AIG is near and dear to my heart. Both my children participated in that program in some way, shape, or form. We actually pulled out of the AIG program at one point because it wasn't being administered in a way at my kid's school, the way that it was most beneficial for my kid. That doesn't mean that we didn't value the AIG program. So that's what could you just guide us through on that? I mean, just so that we are not going to sit here and say, we're looking at this list, and which of those are you not doing, and which of those are you doing? Because otherwise, we're going to be sitting here saying, okay, we think that if you move this around, that's not really our job. I mean, I think. So could you just provide a little bit of guidance on that?
So reassignment is me.
Right,
That's my
not
job.
us.
So HR reassignment, I actually sent that to you in the memo, that this week we'd be talking, we'd be reassigning central office positions. We have to. I mean, if we don't do, I get it, and I understand. I am not emotionless about this. I would love for us not to have to do this at all. Just to start there, this is hard. We've talked about it. We've tried, but we have to present a budget that will balance. And so instead of looking at student-facing positions and doing anything, we haven't done anything with student-facing positions as of yet. Central office positions, yes. I gave them the green light and shared with them. They'll start to have those conversations because there are positions that are there that are what we call out of the vacant. Some are essential, and we're creating a hole, well, not creating a hole, creating a vacancy that will release that dollar amount that goes to some of those those numbers. So we do have to reassign. I have to reassign positions. I don't know how you wouldn't reassign, and if you can't have every position to be reassigned. So for instance, if that were the case, we would never be able to do HR if we could not reassign. I couldn't reassign someone if they are personnel and it's something, an issue. I couldn't reassign them to home if I had to wait. So you have to follow, and it's actually contractual in there, that what I have to do. So it's not, it's not an issue of going behind anyone's back, because I did let you know on the Friday memo. This is where,
I'm
but I
just
just
trying to
wanted
get us
everyone
clear.
to understand that we aren't, this is hard for everyone, the people who have to sit in front of the people, everyone, but what we're doing is assigning them and making sure that they have a position. That's our goal, to make sure that they have a job. It may not be the job that they had 3 days ago, but they have a job. And that's what we're wanting to make sure, so that we don't have to do a reduction in force. That would be horrible to have to do. So we have to.
Yeah, and my whole point was just for us to be clear is that I don't think that we're here to cast judgment on how you've reassigned, unless there's a priority that we can put to our strategic plan, that this, why are you eliminating this whole department, or why are you eliminating blah, 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 because we're just supposed to this is my opinion, we're just supposed to look at how this fits in and go, wow, that's not following our strategic plan. What can we do differently? So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So along that vein, Ms. Grable, if we don't agree with this budget, I feel like that's part of what this work session is for. And
Right.
so I hear what you're saying as far as the details, but if there's something, and Ms. Walker brought up the 2 pre-K classrooms, I think we talked about it to the tune of $480,000. If that was something that the board said, we want to include that in the budget, and so rather than a 5.5 additional ask, it would be a 5.98 additional ask. Does that make sense? So I think that is the conversation I'm hearing, that I'm getting taken away from this table. But my other question is specifically in regards to priority schools, and when we're talking about putting people back in or filling in jobs different, can you talk us through the prioritization of ensuring that we have that additional support at our priority schools?
A text from Employee Relations. I apologize. Can you answer the question again?
Okay, so I was just talking about priority schools, and so when we're talking about shifting people around and moving from central office into priority schools, can you talk about how we are ensuring that staffing at our priority schools is looking for next year?
Sure. Now, I can tell you that, again, before we start putting positions back in places, we have to reach our balance point.
Okay.
So when we do reach our balance point, things like that are things we will look at, whether a priority school has the adequate class sizes they needed and the support they needed. One example is 2 of our middle schools have 3 counselors instead of 2. So how are we going to maintain things like that? This school has more social work support than another. Those are all factors we look at.
Assistant principals. things like that.
assistant principal, is an example, but a lot of our priority schools also have flexibility in Title I funding and other opportunities to help balance those scales. To be fair, the law says that we have to allot the state money equally so that they can use their Title I money to build equity.
Yeah.
And that's really that difference between equity and equality. Okay, so we have to provide that out equally. They use their Title I money, some of them have CSI support to build that equity. Now, we will lean in where we can, because I've worked in a priority school before, and I know that, geez, 26 kids in a class, that's just not gonna work. But until we can reach our balance point, I can't revert back until I know that we're safe, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But for schools like that, I've worked individually with those principals, their ED is working with them, but if we have to revert back, I think the thing is that we know where those needs really lie. But I will tell you talking with principals, that 12 in a class versus 15 in a class is different than making sure I have a full-time counselor. You know, those are things. Sorry.
I'm going to back out and just pick up on some things that I feel like I'm hearing. I'm frustrated. I don't feel like I have all the tools that I need. Before I came to this board, I had sat in on hundreds of county commission budget sessions and town sessions, and the process they go through as an elected body to be able to vote yes or no on a budget. And I keep reading in the media that we reviewed the budget, but this is not the budget, you know, and Ms. Walker has a stack there from when last time she asked for a copy of the budget and has all those details in it. But I'm used to having a budget, and it shows me, okay, we still got an overage, a shortage here. This is what we're working towards, but it's something that we can look at the whole picture and evaluate for ourselves whether it's something we want to say yes to or no to. And I feel like I don't mean to say you're not being transparent, but that's what it feels like. It's very frustrating. And we're getting bombarded. The media's going crazy. Not all their stories are correct. Not all the emails we get are correct. Not everything that's being told to the county is correct by the people who are now emailing the county with veracity. And I'm frustrated that in a couple of weeks or a month or who knows, we don't even know when we're going to vote on the budget. I just feel like I'm left out of the loop and I'm not doing my job, and it's very frustrating to me on all these things. Yes, Ms. Barnhart says, and if it's the will of these 7 people to say, yeah, put those 2 pre-K classrooms back in, ask for an extra $480,000, we can do that. But we have to have the knowledge of where we stand with that to be able to do that kind of a vote. But there are so many other areas here that we have not yet even talked about. Ms. Barnhart asked last time we were together, can we sit down and say, these are our priorities? And we've still never done this, and this is supposed to be our last meeting. So I am frustrated.
Mr. McManus, you have a question? I don't think this is going to be our last meeting. I agree with everything that everybody has said. I still feel like we haven't accomplished anything. Yeah, we left the last meeting, and I think we all agreed, what did we do? We need to cut duplicate. We need specificity, once again. You need to tell us, you say 6 AIG, 8 and 7. We need to hear exactly what you recommend, and then we decide whether we agree or disagree. But again, I'll say it, we cannot sacrifice the low end, the exceptional, that's the wrong word to say, I apologize, the exceptional needs arena, nor the AIG. And what we're getting hit with is both. And letters have been sent out that I didn't approve as a board member. I don't assume anybody did, that you're losing your position. That has not been determined. And I want the public to know, they may, before it's over with, but we haven't done it. And we need to get to it if we're going to present a budget. And I mean, that's our charge, whether we like it or not. But we're dealing right here with, I can't put my hands on it. It's like bubbles.
Yes.
What are we going to discuss and what are we going to do? If we're not going to ask for more money, if we're not going to go after endowment monies, I met with at least one commissioner Ben David, Mayor Sappho, way back, about a bond. And of course, you don't want to do an election year, I get that.
We have
But-
to do it in election year.
Huh?
It has to be done in election.
The president's election year, and I get that. So that forwarded to, I guess, to 26. But let's look at New Hanover High School. No one's come out and said a thing about New Hanover High School, 103 years old, falling apart based upon just alone what our capital. And I hope that that's not affect what we did. We had to take away from one school to get to New Hanover for safety reasons. People don't know why we make decisions, but we need, look, can we get to the specifics, and then let's just agree to disagree, and vote, and let's get it, because we're tearing this community apart. Absolutely tearing this community apart. Starting intrinsically with our staff. Ms. Walker.
And I'm going to piggyback on my fellow board members' discussion on the frustration, and it's a lot. And I'm going to tell you, when you get elected to this position, you're not born, or you're not coming into knowing every single thing. There's a very steep learning curve here. And I could tell you, this stat came from 2022. That's the year I voted against the budget. I was upset because I felt, as a board member, I had to vote on a budget, and I didn't have all the information I felt I needed. And I worked extra hard to get something, and I eventually did get something. But as you all know, you can look back and Google us from that year. It was not an easy year that year either. And I guess the good thing, not great thing, but you folks here now that are a part of this board feel some of the frustration that I did feel back then as well. And I just feel like we have to make very heavy decisions for people. And not just people, that trickles down to our students. Like these discussions are so super important. And one of the frustrations I did feel when I was at the county meeting was I'm sitting in a room being talked about, and I did not feel I was connected to some of these conversations, and it was very, very frustrating. You should see the notes I have written on my own pages. And I just, I want to be able to go into a decision on this budget, whether we ask for more or we hope we get more and ask for more. But I want people to understand, especially county folks, this is not an us versus them scenario. We are all county people here. We are a separately elected body, and I do understand that, but we are all county people. We're the second largest employer. These students are all our students. So I really hope going forward it's not going to be a thing of, well, if we give them more money, they're going to do X, Y, and Z with it. We are trying to make the right choices here, but I agree with Ms. Bradford, like, we need to have solid information. And look, I have, like, honestly, I promise you, I spent a lot of time looking at these pages. I have so much paperwork here. I just want to know that we're going in making decisions, doing the right thing for our staff, our students, our community. And if it means that we need to come together again, because I don't think this is the last budget meeting, and I've asked that we have another joint meeting, it's got to be helpful, because I know commissioners have so much on their plate, they're not going to know every single nuance of what we need to know. But I just want to piggyback on that, and I know, sorry, I wanted to bring the papers and talk about it, but I wanted to say this also. The AIG, so Ms. Barnhart's point about high needs school, the reason the priority schools, they are high needs for a reason, and I just feel like, I know we've got to do a baseline at some point, but I really do think with the prioritization discussion, it has to be talked about. Some of our schools do need more. That's just a fact. They're high poverty schools, they're high need schools, high trauma. I mean, we really just need to do that. The last question I have is, so the AIG, I just want to be clear, are we losing our AIG high school people or not? Because I've been told, they have been told they're gone. And I just want to know right now whether we are or we're not. Can someone answer that, please?
People in position.
Sorry, I don't want to speak without the attorney present, but that may be considered a personnel matter.
Yeah.
I'm happy to go if we have to, but.
I mean, I'm fine too, but I don't think this should be
I asked
discussed
the
tonight.
question last time, at the last meeting, and I didn't get an answer, and I feel like that's still not answered, and I'm still getting more emails. I'm sure the board is getting more emails.
Then could you get us an answer after you check with the attorney and then email it to us as confidential so that we know?
What I would ask, and I'll answer all of those questions for you, I think we need to set up meetings of 2 to 3. Because what I think, what you're wanting to see is how does Ashley Chris, Julie, Patrice, Dawn, and Eddie, Charles, come together and create a budget. And I get it, you want to see those things, but we actually, when that comes together, there's a budget analysis who comes in with us, and they're taking out positions, and they're putting in, and we're saying positions, not people, and we're doing average cost and how much it's going to cost. So you have to say, if you want X amount of positions, you do the average cost, and you have to put all these fringe benefits in there. So when you're saying, I don't have enough information, that's because behind the scenes, we've done all that workup for you and put those positions in. So if you add in 7 positions, those 7 positions could be anywhere from, I don't know, $300,000 to $1 million, depending on those positions. So that's what we do behind the scenes. And when you come, we're showing you a local budget. That's what you're voting on, is technically your local budget and what you can do with the local budget. But we would be more than happy for you to come in, sit down, and we can go through all of your questions so that you will have all of the answers. And if there's something that you need to share with your constituents, that you can actually share with them, so we can actually get it all the way down to ground zero so that you can explain it. Because I don't think we will violate personnel if we do it open session. And there's no way that the budget analyst can come in and take out, put in, take in, put out. That's not what we can do. And we have balanced this budget for you. And so that's what we wanted to make sure. And when we think about the priorities are, one, to make sure that people have a job. That's the first thing that we think about. And we have gone around and around and around internally about this. What is the most, we presented worst case scenario, which we knew that was going to correct itself. But we have to actually sit down with you, and I think that's the only way we can solve those questions for you, so that you will have them. If the budget that we're voting on is this year's budget, the budget, that complete budget, that's the 300, and at that point I think it was like $300, almost $400,000. And that's everything that's in there. You're wanting to look at this year's current budget. And it's a lot. So I don't know if 3 months is going to get you to a full explanation of how to balance a budget. I don't think but it will give, but we can do it one-on-one. We'll give it our best shot with you and walk you through and talk to you about some of the things. So I think that's what you probably need, is just to be able to ask your questions. And it's not that we're not wanting to answer them in public. That is not what we want to do. We're very cautious of making sure that we don't violate any laws. That's the whole thing.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say, I understand how difficult this is. This is my 4th budget year. I know how difficult it is. My point is, we as elected folks are accountable to the people who elected us. Yes. And we have questions because they have questions. And I know we don't want to get too granular because we don't want to violate personnel law and all that, but I can tell you how many emails we get about specific things that are happening in our district, and we have questions, and people need to know the answers to these questions. And I'm sorry if it's too maybe fringing on it, but I asked the question the last time and I think we did months ago, like, what is going on? And if there are things that are happening we don't know about, we need to answer those questions. So
We need to make a motion to amend the agenda to add a closed session at this time.
I will second that.
First and second.
Or
Any discussion on a closed session?
Let's do it.
All in favor of a closed session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 7-0. I had a couple questions before we go into closed session.
Mr. Waterboard, that motion didn't say where we're going to put it.
I would say right after this, Ms. Walker, how would you like to clarify, please? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Barnhart.
I would make it V before the actual B, and then change adjournment to VI, which would be 6.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Amendment.
second. Vote on that again. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 7-0. My 3 quick questions, because I haven't had an opportunity to ask a lot of questions. I think I've heard questions from a lot of folks that we've asked, but we haven't. The endowment timeline. I've heard we were looking at possibly 26, if we get it, literacy positions, which is wonderful. But then I also heard that that's not opening up till January. Is that true? Is that what we're hearing? So it wouldn't be until January. Sorry?
I'll share that with you.
Okay. The second one is, is there a reason we can't ask for the 2 additional pre-K classrooms? We can add that money in.
What was that question, Mr. Woodward?
He said, is there a reason?
Is there a reason why we cannot ask for the funding for the 2 additional classrooms from the county? The county, there he is, the county. No, we're glad to have the county here. So the answer is no, there's no reason we can't do that, okay? Yeah. And 3, in a general sense, because I understand, I definitely 100% with you on that as far as getting into things, but have there been any letters sent out that say to a specific, to anybody that we...
Beyond ESSER.
Yeah, is it beyond ESSER? I mean, obviously, if...
No,
if
I need
local
more
form-
clarity on that as well, so I can address that in closed session.
Okay, very good. All right. Ms. Craybill? Yeah, we'll go one more
okay.
time around, then we'll go into closed
Okay,
session.
so, as we're, I want to get 2 questions in before we move. The one question is, can we all put together a list of, since we're all sort of talking about what we want and don't want eliminated, what positions do we not want eliminated? And we're not talking people. I mean, I come back to Dr. Barnes and his sage words of, we have to uncouple ourselves from the person and the job. And so if there are positions that we don't see as viable, then we need to say that out loud. If there are positions that we want to keep, then we need to say that out loud, because we can't even give them direction if we don't even know what that means ourselves. So I just wanted to throw that in. But here's another thing that when I was listening to the county commissioners and their preliminary budget stuff, there was a huge discussion about the Port City United funding. And that's a lot of money that is sitting out there. And according to what you point out, it was like 1.3 million if we were going to eliminate the community resource coordinators and leave that to another, either keep them in place or reassign the money. So is that money that, if the county commissioners make that choice to not fund the CRC positions or any part of Port City United, and I know that some of the commissioners had talked about and are still talking about redirecting that money to New Hanover County Schools. And so my question is, do we have like a little bit of a plan B that if that money were to come to us, would it be additional money, Eric, or would it be just, they're just going to say, we're not going to pay them, we're going to give it to the schools? I don't know how that would work. But is that something that we could sort of put on the side after we make our list of what we would like to save or what to do to tap into that resource somewhere? I don't know I know they haven't voted, so obviously you're supposing, but.
I would just note on that slide that the CRCs are not currently part of the budget beyond the ARP period, which ends December 31st. So the first asterisk means there's no general fund funding for those positions currently in the budget. So if we were to either allocate money to them or take the money that would have been allocated to you, it would sort of be an additional expenditure that's not currently been presented to them yet.
Okay.
Can I follow up on that?
So that's really not money that's out there to play with?
Well, I heard the same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was kind of going to go along the same vein. The reality is I like to see an increase of this 5.5 versus the 4.5. The reason for the 4.5 was to get us to that balance of just, inflation costs to maintain. However, I'm extremely concerned about the capital projects, knowing that we will not be able to get a bond this time. This is why we're not able to put one together for this year. So the next year that we're able to put a bond on the ballot is 26. There are substantial capital needs in addition to, we're talking about operating and condensing and doing lots of things that we have lots of opinions about. But I believe the combination of some of these classrooms and positions that we'd like to see stay in our schools, as well as the capital, I believe that we need to come together with a higher than 5.5 ask, understanding that from this conversation, this is what the balance looked like is, and this is what we would do with a balanced budget. But some of the things that were coming out of capital were replacements of cameras that then had a warranty for 10 years. So then we were good for the next 10 years with this, versus just playing whack-a-mole, which is what has been happening with some of our building stuff. And I mean no disrespect, Mr. Anderson. I know that your team does a great job, but this is part of that planning process when you're looking for sustainable and maintaining our schools, the operation side and the capital side. So I would like to have a closed session prior to making a motion, but I think I was going to use the dollar amount of, I don't know, $5.75 million, which happens to be the tune of Fort City United, and say, let's add that in and say, let's ask for 10 or 11 point, whatever the math is, more than what we're currently asking.
Mason?
And to kind of piggyback off of what Ms. Barnhart said, I do agree with much of what she said. And when I listened to the commissioner budget meeting, the concern with that capital budget not being given, they're not giving us any more. I've been to New Hanover. It's very concerning. It's a safety issue, and it could lead to a lot of really, really terrible things. And so we absolutely have to be able to address not just New Hanover, because I know that there are other buildings that do also have issues, but New Hanover is just the big one that just pops up all the time. And so I do have concerns about the capital funding.
Patrick?
Eric, that discussion on Port City United, there's money left from now till December, now till June. There was a little window of money. I think that's what Ms. Crable's referring to. And that's maybe what we were asking, could we get it reallocated to us? Am I right? Is my memory correct? Because that's what I was thinking when it was happening. One county commissioner was saying, let's end it now. Why drag it out and let it titrate on out? Why not just end it now? And if it was ended now, because everyone's on suspension, or except for that one person maybe, you know, where's the money in that? I can't read this and talk at the same time.
If you look at slide 26, we've got I'm on it, yeah. $1,134,000 in the general fund that's assigned to Port City United activities.
So, yeah, and it qualifies for ARP. So why couldn't we ask for that? I mean, you don't have to commit, you can't commit, but we could ask, could we not?
I feel like it's better if he doesn't.
Okay, that's okay. But I just want to make sure that it's possible, and it sounds like it is.
Mr. McManus, you have another question?
I'd love a call.
I do, if Eric, I don't want you to be comfortable. Feel free to say you don't want to answer, you don't know the answer, but I'm still want to go back to the endowment. How do you close, are they public, in this public, they are public funds? Well, how do they categorize those funding? How do you close something for a period of time when the needs don't go away? I guess it's easier.
I'm really not the one to answer endowment questions. I apologize.
Right, this is, yeah, he doesn't have anything to do with the endowment.
But I did, yeah, just thank you.
Sorry.
Ms. Walker, would you take us home, please, and then we'll go to closed session?
Yes, sir, glad to. Although I do have, I'm just going to say, maybe to Ms. Barnhart's point, or Ms. Cravel said it, I don't know. We come up with a list of questions that we cannot get answered today, and maybe we can just submit them, and maybe that will help, because I had a lot more, but we don't have time. I just want to say, because I was there, I listened to the capital projects meeting. It sounded to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're diverting capital project money to our budget. Is that, I'm going to look for that slide. I just want to say, first of all, like I said, as 3.5 years on the board, Mr. Anderson has done an excellent job letting us know what is very, very important that needs to be fixed. And I feel like if they're on that top of that list, that they need to be done. And I feel
I agree.
if we're diverting money away from that, and of course, I wanted to clarify too, because there were questions at the meeting, school's open, so you can't do some of this stuff while school's open, while students are in there, and that is the reason why it takes a little bit longer at the end of the year to do projects, for other reasons as well. And then there's supply issues, there's so many things that go on, and it's so complicated, but he does an excellent job letting us know what our priorities are, and so that money's been earmarked for important things to get fixed, and I am concerned if we don't have that money there to get it done, because we have to fill a space here with money. I mean, I'm just concerned. Hanover is definitely a prime example, but there are things like cameras. I mean, these speak to everything on our strategic plan, safety and, you know, everything you can think of. So I don't know if we need to have a further discussion about that. I wasn't part of that discussion either. I was very surprised to hear it at the meeting as well. So, I mean, I guess that's my last discussion, except for the bond issue. Like, I know there's no appetite to do that, and I wish we had kept that discussion going, at least talked about the pros and cons of why we do or don't do it. But it's definitely a need. We had a utilization study done. They said we're full, and our high schools are, some of them 200 over capacity, which is a safety issue as well. You talk about discipline. It's all connected. And if we're not going to have the bond discussion now, I mean, it has to happen in the next year and a half, because we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, you know, not just in repairs and rebuilds and Hanover. You know, what do we do? I mean, and you're talking about these projects are going to take many, many years to do, even when we decide to do them. So we're really making decisions that are going to probably not, they'll be happening after we're gone from this position. So that's the last thing I'm going to say, even though I have time for more. Thank you.
Well, there is a question.
Mr. Anderson speak? Mr. Anderson?
No, thank you for all of your comments, and especially regards to capital. I want to respond to that and break it into two categories. You know, we have annual capital. The county gave us a large sum of money to address, you know, some of our needs. When you think about a capital project, we get funding in July. We do our design in the fall, we bid in the spring, and construction happens the following summer. We're on track with those projects. And I know that even without a local county appropriation, we do have state lottery funds. And I think in looking at our current capital list and determining what is the highest priority, what cannot wait one more year, we'll be able to defer a project a year, address those needs. I'm confident that we will be able to address, you know, those highest priority needs, and that, you know, our capital funding will resume the following year. In terms of a bond, you know, I agree with you. We are not going to keep up with the needs of the district through our annual capital. And I think the priority right now is on the operating budget, and that those discussions will resume once we get this budget approved.
All right. Thank you. With that in mind, at this point, I call for motion to go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143, 31811, for the following purpose: to prevent the disclosure of information that might be privileged or confidential pursuant to General Statute 115C 402, not considered public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of General Statutes, and to consider qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual employed or considered for employment with the school system, or to hear or investigate a complaint, charge, or grievance for or by and against, charge or grievance by or against an individual employee. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Craybill?
Will we have the opportunity to come back and ask more questions out here afterwards? Because there was one more point that Ashley made in the very beginning that I need to ask a question about.
I think we'll have some.
I think we'll have some time. I plan to.
So we're doing, number 5 would be closed, and then we come back out and we're not going to adjourn right away. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Does that need to be included in a motion anywhere?
Not to my knowledge, no?
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We're in closed session. Members, please meet me quickly in there so we have some time.
So you have that by
Good.
email?
shooting for? Yes, ma'am. What's we get for? One, two, three, four. Absolutely.
So the total revenue right now is 334, 334 million?
For what?
The ask that we're doing. This.
All right. Ms. Walker has a seat.
Big Manus isn't here.
Oh, okay. All right. Back in open session. We are here at the time for closing questions and/or closing statements. Ms. Sutton, would you like to make a closing statement? And then Dr. Faust, and we'll go around.
Yeah, so I think we are all on the same page. I just want to make sure. So previously, in previous work sessions, I've shared information about positions, and I've shared information about non-salary line items, and we've gone through the changes. This budget document, this is a summary at the level that the board approves, but this document is based on what I'm hearing from the county, what I'm hearing from state, federal, on revenue projections. And so we've balanced the budget with that information in mind. And then also taking into account turnover rates. And so I just want to be clear, so that's what this document is. So if there's anything else that needs to be done related to the budget plan, I'll just need more direction on that.
Thank you. Dr. Faust.
Absolutely. So we will take some time, and I definitely want you to all sign, those of you who want to sign up to come look at our budget. The other portion of that is making sure that everyone understands, the board understands that when we balance our budget or look at our student-facing positions, that we want to make sure that our student-facing positions are there. We are taking a hit at the district level, but those those school positions will be there, and it will be aligned to the formula that is given. So that's what I want you to understand as you're out talking with your constituents, is that we will be aligned to our formula, and that there'll be more discussion, more conversations, but we are honestly listening to our principals and making sure that our principals have given us insight, and that is how we get to our number also.
Thank you, Dr. Faust. Ms. Walker. We're going to start with you, Ms. Sutton.
I did have an actual question. It was in Ashley's spreadsheet here. It says alternative programs, $7,295,749. Does that include most? Did you see that? Alternative programs?
On the second page?
First page.
Yes,
Is that what that means?
that does include funding for Mosley, which would be the high school. I think you're talking about the high school program. Yes. I haven't heard anything from the commissioners. That was just.
Did you have a closing statement?
Oh, closing statement. You know, that was longer to think about that. No, I will say, y'all have heard a lot of what I've said already, and so I'm not going to go on about that. But I agree, as a board, we need to learn as much as we can, and we need to come back with what we believe would be the best for our district, and hopefully we will have an ask once we have all the information, once we meet again. But I would really like to get on the books some kind of next meeting And do you believe that we need another joint meeting or not?
Absolutely.
So-
Hold Mr. Remark today. Mr. McManus.
I'm feeling better, I guess is what I want to end. I'm feeling better about where we are and where we hope to end up. I think county commissioners have also indicated willingness to support us. Hopefully, we can push them some more on endowment, et cetera. But I am feeling better. That's the way to end the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. McManus. Ms. Bradford.
And I would agree with what we've already heard. That was very helpful, and I think we need to look at it as the two separate things. You know, we're trying to take care of our staff, but we're taking care of our students, and I think the missing puzzle in a lot of what the conversation is out there in the community is the number of students that will not be in our classrooms next year that were in last year, that were in this year. So can you give me those numbers again now for the media so they can report it? Because I think that's the missing equation of what everyone's thinking about. We're thinking about, oh, our kids aren't going to have a teacher in their classroom. Well, maybe that classroom's going to be half that size, and it's going to be absorbed into another. I don't know. That's just hypothetical. But that was the part I was missing. I knew it, but I had forgotten that we can reduce staff because we have less students. And in my opinion, we're going to have less students in 25-26, just to the way things are going. So can you give us that number?
And you just need the grand total for the year, the funding number of students that were funded in each year? Is that what you're
Yeah.
asking me for? Okay, let me look that up real quick.
Yeah, what's your projection for next year? I mean, you've given it to us before.
24,858 is next year, but I don't recall
And
this
that's
year
less,
and the year before. But I can look that up.
Because it was 26 something a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So we're down, I mean, and Ms. Barnhart and I both talked about that when we were candidates. We were down 2,000 students, we knew
Right.
that.
Right. I'll have to look it up. I don't know those off the top of my head.
When you multiply that by $4,000, 34, or a little bit of bump, that's a lot of money.
Ms. Craybill.
Yeah, so, two questions, based on when you rolled through in the very beginning, Ashley. When you said, by May 3rd, we are waiting to hear about different monies that DPI might be giving us. So one of my questions there was, what might we expect to be different? Like, are we expecting more? Are we expecting less? Do we have to ask?
So at this point, I've estimated, based on all the information that I have, I honestly anticipate that when the state releases their number, it's going to be pretty close to my estimate because I'm using the same information. Until the state budget passes, that would maybe change a formula or something like that. I'm not anticipating a big change, but I guess we'll wait and see May 3rd. So I'm, at this point, not expecting my numbers to be very different than their numbers because they're still just doing projections just like I am.
Okay, and the same thing around in the federal grant money that we're going to be getting. And I thought I heard you say we were still waiting to hear from them too. So what might we? So I'm just trying to figure out what might we be expecting. Is it too Pollyanna to think that it could be higher?
I mean, it is possible that it would be higher for the federal revenue. I don't have a good way to estimate federal revenue because it takes, a lot of those formulas take into account other counties and what their socioeconomic rates are and things like that. So that number could very well be higher than what I have projected, but I've just projected the same as this year, assuming that there wouldn't be a decrease of that 10 or 15%. So that number could very well be higher, but we won't have that number until the beginning of June is what I was told yesterday.
All right, so closing statement. I don't feel like we got anywhere, that towards some of our concerns. I would like to see us each put down like 1, 2, 3, maybe top 5. What do we want to save? Like, what do we see that we cannot do without? And what can and use this list that the central office, that Dr. Fast and his team put together as a starting point to comments earlier is if we haven't given them specific feedback, then now is the time that we have to give them specific feedback. So I would suggest that we each, take a look at this, 270 or the 279 list that was proposed and just say, I really can't live without this. And then send them all to our board chair. You compile them so that we have a starting point for our next meeting. Because otherwise, we're going to be sitting here going around in a circle again. And we shouldn't be, and I know we all do, and I've talked with so many people at the NCSBA conferences I go to, reasons that they got on the board to be the board, because one guy even told me, because I didn't like my kid's principal and I wanted him gone. And I'm like, oh my God, that is like so not a good reason to, run for elected office. But when we're talking about things that are near and dear to our hearts, we should be able to explain within the confines of our strategic plan what that means. Not like, I really like this program because my kid was in it, or because, my neighbor's kid saw something. So I think we need to do that. And I would like to, I don't know if that needs to be in a motion format, but I really would encourage us all to send our chair our top priorities so that we have a central place to start from in the next go-round of discussion. And feed them, straight to Dr. Faust and his team. Because otherwise they're just like, pulling things, out of where, just trying to figure it out. And then only for us to shoot holes in it. And we shouldn't be the hole shooter. We should be, helping create those holes to insert those marbles, kind of thing.
Thank you, Trevor. Ms. Barnhart?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have already been talking about the areas of concern. This has been in closed session with specific titles. This has been an open session. We have, and one of the reactionary responses was Ms. Sutton brought a budget rather than a $4.5 million increase, which would have been the maintained budget that we have now with inflation for next year, to a $5.5 million budget with specific targets to reinsert positions back into the EC program. I think we need to walk away from this, directing our staff to create a budget with a higher ask than $5.5 million. And so I would make a motion prior to going into next session that Ms. Sutton bring back a budget and the board can have input with where those budget reinsertions are of an $8 million increase rather than a $5.5 million increase. I'll make that motion.
First, second, third. Okay, any discussion on that motion? Ms. Craybill?
Yeah,
Let's go with Ms. Sutton first.
Okay.
It would be helpful for me, instead of just a dollar amount, if you compile the positions, then I can cost out the exact positions that we've identified, and then I can, kind of like we did with capital, I'll go down as far, if you can compile the list, prioritize it, and then provide that to me, then I can go down as far as I can on the list to reach, what did we say, the 8.8 million, if that's what, or whatever the number is, I don't know, whatever the board wants the number to be. And then once I have that direction, then I can provide a different budget with that update information.
Okay, first, second, third, Ms. Craybill?
That's exactly what I just suggested, for us to, rather than to shoot the holes, we have to do something more. We can't just have her going back, and creating something, us go, we don't like it. Creating something, ask for more. Creating something, oh no, ask for more. We have to take some ownership on that and do that. So I'm not going to be able to support the motion to ask for more money until we do our part, our homework, and give more direction.
Any other discussion? If not,
Yes, all right, tell me what your motion is again.
I make a motion to increase the budgetary ask from an additional $5.5 million to $8 million. I do not, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, I do not want to walk away from this table saying that I'm comfortable with this. We are not, we've openly talked about this, now, prioritization, I actually brought this up at our last meeting. I want us to sit down and prioritize and talk about the biggest concern, echoed and echoed, has been the EC department. So the reality is, if we don't give a number for her to come back with, then she could come back with a $6 million ask. and she could work that in. She could come back with she could come back with a $30 million increase ask. But the reality is, if we don't give direction to our staff, they are not going to be able to come back with the budget. So that is why my suggestion is $8 million. That would be able for us to look at the operating, reevaluate the capital, and we can come together and prioritize what those look like, and I'm fine with that. But I'm not going to withdraw my motion.
No, I'm not asking you to withdraw your motion, because I'm just wondering how, not that your math is not good and that your number is not right, but we don't have all of the information that we need to say, do 8 million. You know, we need, what Ashley suggested is, we have to give our priorities, and if we collect those, give them to Pete, Chair Pete, and then he turns them over to Ashley. I think putting a number in there is just not appropriate, because we don't know what the appropriate number is. But if we all say we want to save EC teachers, then she goes back and she goes, okay, 20 teachers are going to cost this, and 20 TAs are going to cost that. But we don't know that, and we can't estimate.
Mr. Chair, so just for clarification, I think y'all were kind of saying the same thing, but what Ms. Sutton was asking for is more specific positions.
Yes, I'm asking for more
And that's going to
positions.
equivocate to a number, but just, I think what I don't know if this, Ms. Crable's just basically asking if we can be more specific, and then we can convert that in, maybe Ms. Sutton can convert them into numbers, what our ask is really, what our priorities are, what to Ms. Crable's point, our if it's EC, for example, what do we need and what do those numbers look like? To give a solid number, not just say 8 million, not that that's not, like you say, might not be accurate, but may be accurate too. So they're saying the same thing.
No, that was my point, is
It's the
I
same
would
thing.
like to amend the motion to be that we ask you to put together numbers based on our priorities, not put together a budget with just some number we pulled out, 8.5 million, because we don't know if that's right.
Okay. There's an amendment. Is there a second?
So I'll second that. 'cause I
Yeah,
think we need to
the
be
amendment is to
specific.
take out the number and to give Ashley a priority list when
Okay.
she comes back.
First and second on that, is there discussion? Ms. Mason.
To the point of specificity, I think that what would be concerning, and I do agree we do need to ask for more. I think that the number, heaven forbid, we all give our feedback to Ms. Sutton, and that number is more than the 8. We are then stuck with that 8, correct? So I lean more toward being very specific. I understand Ms. Barnhart's point, and I absolutely respect it and agree that we definitely need to ask for more. I just wonder if we're lowballing, we're not going to get what we're looking for either. If for us to get what we want, which I believe we all want to keep as many jobs as possible, we want to make sure our staff and our students are taken care of. I feel as though specificity would aid us in that. It may cause us to need more than the 8 million. It may cause us to need less, but having those specific details, I think, is going to benefit us in the long run and benefit our staff in the long run.
Further discussion? Mr. Jimenez?
I think both of you are saying the same thing, so I can agree. I hate to run down the bus, actually, but whatever that number is, as soon as you can let us know.
Okay, so I'm understanding that your motion or amendment is to delete the 8 million, keep it at whatever it is, send your priorities to me, which I will bring, look at that, prioritize, and then send it on to you guys. And then we'll have a
That was
number.
one, just so that they have a chance to do the jobs we pay them to do.
Okay, all right. So let's,
I have further discussion.
go ahead.
The concern not having a number is we are working with a county who's balancing the budget for the entire county. So if we sit here and say, well, I think we're going to need some more, and they don't know, and they're having to adjust and prioritize, they need to understand too in the big budget process, whenever they're looking and talking and hearing, that we are having an increased ask. It's not 4.5, okay, 5.5, but they need to be able to understand that it is a few $1 million more that we want to ask from them, and they have to be able to work it in their budget. And so we can continue to postpone this off and not have a number, but today was brought to us to talk about the capital. The capital was decreased in this. This is a concern overall. I mean, so this is, we cannot have a number and we can walk away, and who knows when we're going to meet back together to actually be able to come together and have this prioritization meeting. But I think that we should have a number to be realistic for our counterparts of the county to understand this is kind of the estimate of where we're thinking.
I echo that. When I'm trying to solve a concern like this, I start with a number and I work backwards, and not just bring me your wish list and see what it totals and that's what we'll ask for. So, I mean, we've had some discussions. I feel comfortable that Mr. Anderson says capital's kind of covered, we're good. It's not what we wanted, but we're Band-Aided through this thing for a year. But based on the discussions we've had, I think that this additional, to get to the 8 is what we need to do. And I think if we work with a firm number, then we're not going to get everything that we ask for. But that's, I mean, come on, we're in a declining economy. We're in, this is the same meeting is happening all over the nation right now in school boards and in county commissions. Our county commission has less money, so we're going to get less money. But we need to be firm and ask early rather than wait till the last second, because they're planning now. And this is a lot of cats to herd, to get the questions to you and then schedule a meeting and so on. We're here. If we pass this at the 8 number and then we find out later, we're just way off, it needed to be 16, which in my opinion we're not going to get, but then we can deal with it then. But I'd rather come out of here having done something today that was moving the ball in the right direction. And I'll shut up now.
Thank you. So realistically, I mean, I have the slide here, they're looking at positions. So realistically, that number is equal to positions, and we don't know that yet. I take the point of asking is better than nothing, but to be very specific on 8 million, I think is where I'm stuck. Only because, like Ms. Crable said, like, Ashley is requesting from us what our priorities are, and she's going to turn that into a number, but I just don't, I agree with both of y'all. I understand that everybody here in their points, but the county commissions look, in the end, it's going to come down to positions, right? And so I think if we find that number out with a more specific ask of priorities, then we can go into it. And you're right, we might not get, it might be more, it might be less, but I just think it's a smarter way to do it in a way that we're doing our homework and we're conveying the priorities, right? So that's mine.
I just have one more question for Ms. Barnhart, if I might ask her. What are your calculations to go from the 5 to 8? Tell me what you are thinking of those dollar amounts are, so that I might feel more comfortable asking for a number from a layperson to a professional, if I know what you're asking.
Sure, you saw the increase of $1 million, roughly 76 positions with Ms. Sutton. Okay, and again, 2 parts here, because we're looking at local dollars for capital and for operating expenses. So when we were looking at what that would filter, she said 6 AIG, 8 specialists, 47 TAs, and 15 classroom teachers. Thank you, ma'am. And so to extrapolate that to say, okay, we would be able to cover, so the discrepancy of where we're at for AIG, for example, from now to where we're dropping to, with having the increase of $1 million, the discrepancy was now, we're only dropping 6 AIG. And then you look at the discrepancy of the EC teachers, and we had dropped 17, which we knew he couldn't give us an exact example of how many EC teachers would be back in the classroom with that, but would increase that. So to just close that gap in the different areas, and this would allow them to give time with the number and value. And it's okay, respectfully, it's okay if my colleagues disagree with me, but I'm putting out the number there for the planning purposes in this instance. But 1 million was roughly 76 positions. Obviously, not everybody makes the same amount, and so it's going to be a little slightly different, but let's say 75 positions. So an additional $2.5 million would be 150, 200, roughly. just under 200, 200, but we're not just specifically talking about positions here, because we're also having capital. He's already done the capital prioritization list. I sat through the capital outlay meeting with the subcommittee just to hear and learn, and the prioritization was even more, and that was brought forth the board was less, because we're like, well, we don't think we're gonna be able to get it all. So there's lots of needs in a lot of different ways. Like I said, I think the board has the opportunity to come together to make sure that prioritization is there when you're talking about divvying out what that additional $8 million would look like. But that's where it's coming from.
So you're asking for 8 million more than what we're already?
No, currently the budget is presented in balance at 5.5 million.
Okay.
Okay, so then my suggestion in motion leaving today is to say, let's move forward with balancing at 8 million additional ask. So it will be an increase of what Ms. Sutton projected from 5.5 to 8, which is an increase of $2.5 million. That will allow us the flexibility to talk about the priorities of what we've expressed them here, but to send the list, like you have suggested, to our chair of where we're at and address some of the other concerns that we
I'm
have.
happy to hear the math, that's what I wanted to hear.
Was the pre-K in there? Classrooms?
The pre-K classrooms would also be able to be included in that, yes. I mean, that comes down to the prioritization that, colleagues have been talking about, and I agree with that.
I love spending the day with you guys.
Ooh.
Oh,
Okay.
Ms. Sutton?
Sorry, I do have that number now. So we are projecting for next year 24,858 students, 858. This year's 25,037 students, and last year the number was 24,791. I do not include
That's
charter
us.
schools in that number. That's just our number.
Okay, so we have an
My
amendment.
motion still stands, is to
Yeah.
do it with no number.
With no
So,
number.
because we are not the professionals who add that money up.
Okay, would you please call the roll? This is for the amendment again.
Mr. Wildebohr?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Barnhart?
No.
Ms. Bradford?
No.
Ms. Craybill?
Yes.
Mr. McManus?
No.
And Ms. Walker?
Yes.
That passes 4-3. We go back to the original motion, the original now amended motion, to add to prioritize, send it to me, to send the prioritized list to Ms. Sutton and to Dr. Faust, who will go through that and come up with a number now that will be used at our next meeting. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Wildebohr?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Barnhart?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Craybill?
Yes.
Mr. McManus?
Yes.
And Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Passes 7-0. We have two people left, here we go, to speak as we close.
We've been here a long time
Yeah.
now.
Left.
We've been here a long time.
She's to my right, that's my left. Go ahead, Ms. Mason.
I do think that this was beneficial. I think that we got to voice a lot of the concerns that we have. Moving forward, I think it's going to be really important for all of us to gain that information about the budget. I am thrilled that we just passed that to have prioritization. I think that's really important. I wish we had had some discussion about it, like, publicly, but I will take what I can get. But really what I want to close with is that I think that everybody in this room, when we're making these decisions, we talk about the positions, we talk about the teachers, we talk about all of that. What it all boils down to is, how is this going to impact our kids? These are our students. They are the ones that are most impacted by all of this. And so as we make these decisions, I am quite certain that we are all considering the impact that it has on our kids.
Speak last. Very good. First off, I want to thank the board members for their passion today. It was very evident. The focus is and shall be and continues to be on students and staff at New Hanover County Schools. I know we don't always agree on everything, but I think we all do agree on that. So that's very, very good. So again, thank you to board members. Thank you to our central office staff for all their hard work in putting this all together and all their continued work. So thank you all for that, for sure. We do thank our county commissioners, and we will be talking to them very soon as we continue to work with them to support our students and our staff. So thank you all for a rather long meeting, but a good meeting. And at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before we go, are you going to send out dates for us for the teacher scholarship?
She's already doing it.
Okay, thank you.
We already talked on the way in. We got that done. Absolutely. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. We are adjourned.